Ambassador Lin's collapse came without warning. One moment, she was addressing the Galactic Council about Earth's integration protocols. The next, she crumpled to the floor, her hands pressed against her temples. The alien delegates scattered in panic, their various appendages flailing as they retreated from what they assumed was a contagious human ailment. Only Captain Sarah Chen, standing guard at the back of the chamber, rushed forward instead of away. As she reached the ambassador, the psychic wave hit her too. But where it had overwhelmed Lin, Chen's mind processed it differently. Years of disaster response training kicked in, her neural pathways, shaped by Earth's harsh evolution, converting the overwhelming sensation into actionable information. "It's a distress call," she announced, helping Lin to a sitting position. "Ambassador, I'm getting it too. But it's structured, like an emergency beacon." The council chamber's atmospheric processors hummed as the alien representatives cautiously approached. The Galactic Council's chief administrator, a tall, spindly being named Vakir, extended one of their sensory tendrils. "Impossible. Our psychic dampeners are rated for standard transmissions," Chen interrupted, her disaster response training taking over. "This is different. It's raw, desperate." She closed her eyes, interpreting the fragments bombarding her consciousness. A mining colony. Proxima VI. The Lumini. She stopped, her eyes snapping open. "Their children are dying." The chamber erupted in motion. The Lumini ambassador, a crystalline being that refracted light in complex patterns of communication, blazed with patterns of distress. Their translator struggled to keep up. "Proxima VI is our most advanced deep mining facility. 3,000 colonists. 500 of them children, their matrices still forming." Chen was already accessing her comm unit, pulling up the facility specifications. What she saw made her jaw clench. The colony operated in conditions that would be challenging even by Earth standards. Variable gravity fields, toxic atmospheric composition, extreme pressure variations. No wonder the Lumini were in trouble. They were a species adapted to stable, controlled environments. Ambassador Lin had recovered enough to stand, though she leaned heavily on her desk. "The council must mobilize immediately. Surely we have emergency protocols. Our rescue teams are not equipped for such conditions." Valkyr's translator rendered their harmonics in flat tones. "The environmental variables exceed safety parameters for most species, even our automated systems." Chen stepped forward, her voice cutting through the growing panic. "Earth will respond." The chamber fell silent. Even the Lumini's light patterns dimmed to a low shimmer. "Captain Chen," Valkyr began, "while we appreciate Earth's enthusiasm, you must understand. Proxima VI's conditions are extreme. The gravity fluctuations alone are nothing compared to what our teams handle during magnetic storm seasons." Chen countered. She projected her comm unit's display, highlighting key statistics. "Your extreme pressure variations. Our deep-sea rescue teams operate in worse, toxic atmosphere. We've evolved filtering lung capacity that your species engineered for." She gestured to her own sturdy frame, shaped by Earth's higher gravity. "We're built for this. Literally." The Lumini ambassador's surface rippled with new patterns. "But the risk is better than watching children die." Chen's voice softened, but her stance remained firm. "Ambassador, I lost people during the Singapore arcology collapse. Good people, because we waited too long to act. I won't make that mistake again." Lin stepped forward, her diplomatic training asserting itself. "The captain speaks for Earth on this matter. We've been trying to show you how we can contribute to the council. Let us prove it." Vakir's tendrils writhed in what Chen had learned was their species' equivalent of intense consideration. "The council cannot officially sanction." "Then don't." Chen was already sending alerts to her potential team members. "Don't sanction it. Don't officially acknowledge it. But don't stop us either. Because right now, those children don't care about politics. They care about survival." She turned to the Lumini ambassador. Transmit everything you have about the colony. Specifications, personnel manifests, recent maintenance logs. Everything. The Lumini's surface blazed with patterns so complex the translator glitched trying to keep up. Finally, it managed. You would do this. Risk your lives for another species' children. Ken thought of her nightmares from Singapore, of the voices that had gone silent while bureaucrats argued about procedures. She thought of Earth, beautiful and brutal Earth, that had forged humanity in conditions that the galaxy considered impossible for intelligent life to survive. She thought of all the times humanity's harsh world adaptations had been viewed with fear or suspicion by other species. That's what humans do, she said simply. We run toward the fire. We dive into the depths. We face the storm. Not because we're fearless, but because we've learned that fear doesn't mean you can't act. If anything, she allowed herself a grim smile. Fear just means you understand exactly how important it is to try. The data transfer from the Lumini began immediately. As Chen scanned the incoming information, she was already composing messages to 4 specific individuals. People she knew would understand exactly what she meant when she said, "How would you like to show the galaxy what Death World survivors can really do?" Eva Rodriguez was 300 meters beneath the Pacific's surface when Chen's message reached her. She was supervising the installation of a new deep-sea geothermal tap, her reinforced diving suit barely registering pressures that would crush most species to paste. The message scrolled across her helmet display. "How's the pressure at 300? Because I've got worse waiting." Eva's response was immediate. Finally, something interesting. She was still dripping seawater in the embassy's briefing room when James Mountain Williams arrived, looking comically out of place in formal diplomatic surroundings. He'd been pulled straight from an industrial accident at the Mars colony's atmospheric processing plant. An accident he'd helped contain while casually brewing coffee in what other species considered lethal conditions. "The air's too clean in here," he complained, dropping into a chair that creaked under his Earth-adapted frame. "Makes me nervous when I can actually breathe properly." Dr. Kenzo Tanaka arrived next, still arguing with his research assistant about the proper containment protocols for what he called slightly spicy bacterial samples. The assistant, a Meridian with environmental sensitivity, was wearing a full containment suit. Kenzo was in shirt sleeves. May Patel was last, her maintenance suit covered in Martian dust. She'd been discovered hanging upside down outside the Mars colony's main dome, manually patching a breach after the repair drones had declared the conditions unsurvivable. She'd labeled the drones dramatic in her incident report. Chen waited until they were all seated before activating the holographic display. The Lumini colony schematics rotated above the table, highlighting the cascading system failures in angry red. 3,000 colonists, she began. 500 children. Environmental systems failing. Gravity fluctuations that would liquefy most species' bones. Atmospheric toxicity that exceeds our safety protocols. She paused, looking at each team member. "The Galactic Council says it's impossible to help them." Williams snorted. "Since when do we care what's impossible?" "The Council's sending us anyway," Chen continued, "because we're the only ones built to survive these conditions. The Lumini are crystalline beings. Think sentient diamond matrices with light-based neural networks. Their children are still forming their final crystalline patterns. If the environmental controls fail completely, they shatter." Eva finished, studying the readouts. "The adults might survive, barely, but the children." She shook her head. "How long do we have?" 12 hours until total system failure. The Council's evacuation ships can't even approach in these conditions." Chen gestured, and new data streams appeared. "We're looking at multiple simultaneous failures. Life support, structural integrity, gravity containment. Everything's going wrong at once." Kenzo was already deep in the environmental data. "These atmospheric readings, they're not random. This pattern." He looked up, his expression grim. "Captain, this looks engineered." The room temperature seemed to drop. Mai leaned forward, her engineer's mind racing. Sabotage. Let's add it to the list of problems, Chen said. Right now, our priority is the children. Questions of who and why come later. She stood, and the others followed suit. We launch in 30 minutes. Standard Death World loadout, plus whatever specialist gear you need. Finally, Williams grinned, a chance to show the galaxy why Earth's gravity is actually a feature, not a bug. As they moved to gear up, Chen caught snippets of their conversations. Eva calculating pressure tolerances far beyond normal safety margins. Kenzo muttering about extremophile adaptation rates. Mai already modifying her tools for crystal matrix repair work. Williams was humming an old rescue workers song. Something about running toward the fire. The council observers watched in barely concealed horror as the team prepared. Their equipment alone violated dozens of safety protocols. Their casual attitude toward lethal conditions seemed to physically pain the safety officers. When Eva tested her pressure suit by deliberately exceeding its rated tolerances, 3 council representatives had to leave the room. Captain Chen. Vaikir approached as the team made final checks. I feel compelled to note that your species' approach to, well, everything, is deeply concerning. Chen checked her emergency beacon, a habit born from too many disasters. With respect, Administrator, that's because you evolved on a world that nurtures. We evolved on a world that challenges. She looked up at the towering alien. You created safety protocols to prevent disasters. We created protocols to survive them. The launch bay doors opened, revealing their modified shuttle. It was ugly by council standards, reinforced, overbuilt, designed to survive conditions that would tear sleeker ships apart. Just like its crew, it was built for worlds that didn't want it to survive. Time to move, Chen announced. Rescue team, final checks. Pressure systems ready, Eva reported. Double redundancy on all seals. Atmospheric scrubbers online, Williams called. Extra filters loaded. Medical systems calibrated for crystalline biology, Kenzo confirmed. Structural support gear modified and tested. Mai finished. Chen allowed herself a small smile. This was what Earth had created. People who looked at impossible conditions and saw Tuesday. People who ran toward danger because running away had never been an option on their unforgiving world. Rescue team, launch in 5, she commanded. Let's show the galaxy what Death Worlders were born to do. The prismatic storms surrounding Proxima VI turned the void of space into a kaleidoscope of lethal beauty. Council ships maintained a safe distance of 50,000 kilometers, their sensors overwhelmed by the electromagnetic chaos. Chen's team watched through reinforced viewports as their shuttle plunged straight toward the heart of it. Reminds me of the Aurora storms back home, Eva commented, making minute adjustments to their trajectory. Remember when those used to be considered dangerous? Before or after we learned to surf them? Williams was checking atmospheric readings, his expression growing more concerned. Captain, these particle concentrations, they're worse than the reports suggested. Chen nodded, watching their shields struggle against the onslaught. Kenzo, what are we really looking at? The xenobiologist was deep in his readings, 3 holographic displays streaming data simultaneously. The storm, it's not just electromagnetic. This is fascinating. It's actually reacting to the Lumini's distress signals. Their crystalline biology produces quantum-level resonance patterns when under stress. The storm's amplifying them. That's why only humans could interpret the distress call, Mai realized. Our neural patterns aren't quantum-locked like most species. We're adaptable. Their shuttle shuddered as they hit the outer layers of Proxima VI's atmosphere. The viewport crystals groaned under forces that would have shattered standard council materials instantly. Eva's hands danced across the controls, compensating for gravity fluctuations that pulled them in 6 different directions simultaneously. First visual on the colony, she announced. And, oh, the Lumini colony was a structure that should have been beautiful. a crystalline spire rising from the planet's tortured surface, refracting the storm's light in ways that hurt human eyes to observe. But now that beauty was fracturing. Entire sections pulsed with unstable energy, while others had gone ominously dark. Life signs, Chen demanded. Kenzo adjusted his sensors. Strong readings from the central spire. They've clustered together. Wait. He leaned forward. The children. They've formed a collective crystalline matrix. They're protecting each other, strengthening their individual structures through quantum entanglement. Just like human kids huddling together during disasters, Williams muttered. Some things are universal. Their landing was less of a touchdown and more of a controlled crash. The colony's automated systems were malfunctioning, requiring Eva to manually override safety protocols that would have prevented their approach. The moment they sealed with an emergency airlock, the team was moving. The interior of the colony was a nightmare of shifting lights and unstable gravity. Crystal walls that should have been solid flickered between states of matter, their molecular bonds stressed by the environmental chaos. The team's boots automatically adjusted to compensate for gravity shifts that would have pulverized unprotected bodies. Life support's failing faster than predicted, Mag reported, her engineering sensors probing the structure. These stress patterns, they're not random. Someone knew exactly where to hit this place to make it fail. Chen was about to respond when they heard it, a crystalline harmonic that vibrated through their bones. Around the next corner, they found their first Lumini survivors. The crystalline beings had formed a defensive circle, their bodies pulsing with waves of desperate light speech. The team's translators struggled to keep up. Humans, impossible. The gravity alone. Why would you? We're here to help, Chen said simply, and even without translation, the Lumini seemed to understand. Their light patterns shifted from panic to something like hope. Then Williams' atmospheric sensors screamed a warning. Captain, the air processors aren't just failing. They're being actively corrupted. Something's eating through the filtration systems. Something or someone. Eva asked, already moving to secure their section. Kenzo was sampling the air, his expression darkening. Both. These are engineered organisms. Microscopic machines designed to look like natural crystal-eating bacteria. But they've mutated beyond their original programming. They're not just attacking the facility anymore. They're evolving. The Lumini's light patterns became frantic. Their translator managed to convey. The children, in central chamber, matrix destabilizing. How long? Chen demanded. Hours in the original estimate, Mai said, checking structural integrity readings. Now, maybe minutes. Chen looked at her team, humans who had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them, who had learned to turn every environmental challenge into an advantage. They nodded as one, understanding without words. Eva, Williams, secure our route to the central chamber. Mai, start working on stabilizing this section's integrity. Kenzo, I need to know everything about these organisms 5 minutes ago. She turned to the Lumini. Show us to your children. Quickly. As they moved deeper into the failing colony, Chen couldn't help but think that this was what humanity had been preparing for all along. Every natural disaster, every environmental catastrophe, every challenge that their death world had thrown at them. It had all been training for moments like this. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth's harsh evolution hadn't been a curse, but a gift. They were about to learn what it meant when Death World survivors decided to save lives instead of taking them. They just had to survive long enough to prove it. The central chamber of the Lumini colony was a cathedral of crystal, its walls resonating with the combined fear of 500 children. Their partially formed matrices huddled together in a massive geometric structure that pulsed with weakening light. Adult Lumini surrounded them, their own crystalline forms vibrating as they tried to reinforce the children's failing patterns. Remarkable. Kenzo breathed, his sensors drinking in the data. They've created a quantum support network. Each adult is literally giving up their own structural stability to support the children's matrices. Like sharing body heat, Williams said, already setting up atmospheric barriers, but with molecular bonds instead of warmth. Eva was in her element, moving through pressure variations that would have crushed most species. Her deep-sea experience let her read the currents of destabilizing gravity like they were ocean tides. "Captain, we've got major structural stress points forming. The children's chamber is acting like a focal point for the colony's deterioration." Chen watched Mai analyze the support structures, the engineer's hands flying over her modified tools. "Give me something good." Mai. "Define good," Mai muttered. "Because I'm seeing deliberate sabotage patterns in every system I check. Someone didn't just want this place to fail. They'd wanted it to fail spectacularly." She pointed to a complex series of fractures spreading through the walls. "See these? They're following the colony's natural resonance patterns. Whoever did this understood crystalline architecture at a fundamental level." A group of Lumini engineers approached, their light speech rapid and desperate. The translation came through in fragments. "Impossible to repair. Structural integrity at 17%. Evacuation protocols useless in these conditions." Williams snorted, adjusting his atmospheric filters. "Impossible by whose standards? Because Earth standards are a bit different." As if to emphasize his point, a gravity wave rippled through the chamber. The Lumini engineers froze, their crystalline forms vibrating dangerously. The human team simply shifted their stance, their bodies automatically compensating for forces that would have shattered most species. "How?" One of the Lumini engineers managed to transmit. "Your molecular structure should be tearing apart. Earth gravity's about 3 times what most Council species consider comfortable," Eva explained, still moving through the pressure variations like they were a mild inconvenience. "And that's before you factor in our magnetic field variations, atmospheric pressure changes, and tectonic instabilities. This," she gestured at the chaotic forces around them, "this is just a Tuesday back home." Kenzo had finished his initial analysis of the sabotaging organisms. "Captain, we've got a bigger problem. These aren't just engineered bacteria. They're a specifically targeted weapon. They're programmed to attack the exact crystalline frequency the Lumini children resonate at." The implications hit the team like a physical blow. This wasn't just sabotage. It was attempted genocide. Chen's expression hardened. "Options. The good news," Kenzo continued. "Earth bacteria evolve faster than anything in the galaxy. We got samples of extremophiles that eat things that shouldn't be edible. If I can modify them." "Do it," Chen ordered. "Mai, what do you need to stabilize this chamber?" "Time we don't have," Mai answered honestly. "But," she looked at Eva, "remember that trick we used during the Mariana Trench reactor crisis? Using pressure differentials to reinforce structural integrity." Eva's eyes lit up. "The gravity waves. They're not random. They're following patterns. If we can predict them, we can use them to strengthen the chamber instead of weakening it." Mai finished. "It'll buy us time, at least." Williams was already moving to the chamber's environmental controls. "I can modify the atmospheric processors to help. Might make the air a bit spicy, but nothing worse than a bad day in old Beijing." The Lumini watched in astonishment as the team split up, each member attacking problems their species had deemed unsolvable. Eva and Mai began setting up gravity wave deflectors, using their experience with Earth's chaotic forces to turn the colony's deterioration against itself. Williams disappeared into the atmospheric control systems, emerging occasionally covered in coolant but grinning. Kenzo transformed a corner of the chamber into a makeshift lab, his hands steady as he worked with organisms that would have terrified most xenobiologists. Chen coordinated it all, her disaster response experience letting her see the patterns in the chaos. She watched her team demonstrate everything that made humans unique in the galaxy, not just their physical adaptations, but their ability to turn deadly conditions into advantages. The Lumini children's matrix stabilized slightly, their light patterns shifting from terror to curiosity as they watched the humans work. One particularly brave crystalline child transmitted a simple message. You're not afraid. Chen smiled, remembering similar questions from human children during countless disasters. We're terrified, she admitted. But humans learned a long time ago that being afraid doesn't mean you can't be brave. Sometimes, being afraid just means you understand exactly how important it is to keep going. The child's matrix pulsed with new patterns, trying to understand this concept that seemed so foreign to their species. Around them, the human team continued their work, each of them proving why Earth's harsh evolution had created exactly the kind of people the galaxy needed right now. They just had to hope it would be enough. The first sign that their temporary solutions were failing came as a harmonic shriek through the crystal walls. The children's matrix flickered, individual crystals threatening to break free from their collective structure. May's gravity deflectors sparked as they struggled against forces that were no longer following predictable patterns. "We've got maybe 10 minutes, May announced, her hands flying over her diagnostic tools. The structural integrity is cascading. Whatever's eating through the colony's foundation just hit something important. Kenzo looked up from his makeshift lab, his expression grim. "Captain, I've identified the organisms. They're not just engineered. They're adapted from Nexeri bioweapons." The name sent a chill through the chamber. The Nexeri were notorious for their aggressive mining operations, their willingness to destroy entire ecosystems for profit. But attacking a colony of children, the mutation patterns, Kenzo continued, they're evolving faster than anything I've seen outside of Earth's extremophile bacteria. They're not just destroying the colony anymore, they're learning from it, adapting to the Lumini's attempts to stop them. Eva cursed as another gravity wave threatened to tear through their defenses. Just like Earth's bacteria, always finding new ways to kill us. "No," Chen said suddenly, her eyes widening. "Not like Earth's bacteria. Exactly like Earth's bacteria." She turned to Kenzo. "You said our bacteria evolve faster than anything in the galaxy. What if that's not just an advantage? What if it's the solution?" Kenzo's eyes lit up with understanding. A controlled extinction event, like introducing invasive species to. "Captain, that's brilliant. And terrifying. But brilliant." Williams looked between them. "Want to share with the class. Earth bacteria don't just evolve fast," Kenzo explained, already pulling samples from his kit. "They evolve competitively. We can introduce modified Earth extremophiles that will specifically target the Nexeri organisms, start our own microscopic war. And we should trust Earth bacteria more than Nexeri weapons because," Mai asked, not looking up from her repairs. "Because Earth's life forms evolved on a death world," Chen answered. "They learn to compete in an environment that makes this colony look friendly. And more importantly, we can control them." A new alarm blared through the chamber. Eva's pressure sensors were screaming warnings. "Whatever we're doing, we need to do it fast. The lower levels are starting to collapse." The Lumini children's matrix pulsed with fear, their collective consciousness picking up on the humans' tension. Chen made a decision. "Kenzo, do it. Eva, Williams, get to the lower levels. Find out what's causing those collapses. May, how long can you hold the children's chamber?" "With the current setup, maybe 5 minutes, if I reconfigure everything and probably violate several laws of physics. 8 minutes. "Make it 10, Chen ordered. "I'm going to have a chat with our saboteurs." The team moved with practiced efficiency, each member understanding their role without need for explanation. As Chen headed for the colony's communication center, she heard Williams shouting back, "Try not to start an interstellar war without us." The communication center was a mess of fractured crystals and failing systems, but one channel was still active, broadcasting on a frequency that matched the Nexeri's known communication patterns. Chen didn't bother with diplomacy. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Crisis Response Team. To the Nexeri vessels watching this colony die, I want you to understand something very clearly." She paused, letting her words carry weight. "You're not just dealing with the Lumini anymore. You're not just dealing with the Council. You're dealing with humans. Death World survivors who evolved on a planet that makes your worst weapons look like toys. She watched the sensor readings, noting the faint power signatures of cloaked ships in the system. Right now, my xenobiologist is releasing modified Earth bacteria into your weapon system. You know Earth bacteria, the organisms that survive in volcanic vents, acid lakes, and radiation zones that would kill your species instantly. Want to guess how they'll interact with your carefully engineered weapon? The sensors showed movement. The hidden ships were adjusting their positions. You have two options, Chen continued, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who had stared down natural disasters. You can withdraw now, provide us with the original specs of your weapon so we can contain it properly, and we'll consider this a tragic accident that doesn't require further investigation. Or, she smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Or you can wait and see what happens when organisms evolved on a death world decide to show your weapons what real biological warfare looks like. Your choice. You have 3 minutes to respond. As she waited for their answer, Chen thought about Earth, beautiful, terrible Earth, that had forged both humanity and the microscopic warriors they now wielded. The planet that had taught them that survival sometimes meant being more terrifying than the things that threatened you. The Nexari were about to learn why the galaxy's most dangerous world had produced its most effective guardians. The Nexari's response came not in words but in action. Their cloaked ships to cloak just long enough to launch a final barrage, not at the colony, but at the bacterial delivery systems Kenzo had stationed around the perimeter. They're trying to sterilize their own weapon, Kenzo reported, his voice tight with concentration as he monitored the bacterial warfare unfolding on a microscopic scale. But they don't understand Earth life. Our bacteria don't die. They adapt. Eva's voice crackled over the comm from the lower levels. Whatever you're doing up there, do it faster. We've got complete structural failure, starting in sections 3 through 7. Williams is holding up a support beam with pure stubbornness right now. It's not stubbornness, Williams grunted in the background. It's properly applied Earth standard muscle density. Also, please hurry. Chen watched the battle unfold on multiple scales. On the microscopic level, Kenzo's modified Earth bacteria were waging war against the Nexari weapon. Evolution accelerated by the extreme conditions. On the macro scale, May's jury-rigged gravity deflectors were buying them precious minutes while Eva and Williams fought to prevent the lower levels from collapsing. The Lumini children's matrix had stabilized slightly, their collective consciousness adapting to work with the humans' efforts rather than fighting them. Their light patterns had shifted from terror to something like fascination as they watched the humans operate in conditions their species considered unsurvivable. The bacterial countermeasure is working, Kenzo announced, his eyes fixed on his readings. But there's a problem. The Nexari weapon wasn't just attacking the structure. It was using the crystal matrices as fuel to replicate. The more we kill, the more energy gets released back into the system. May's voice cut through the chamber. That energy has to go somewhere. If it feeds back into the children's matrix, they'll shatter. Chen finished. She turned to the adult Lumini. Your species communicates through light, through quantum resonance. Can you channel this energy? Convert it into something useful? The Lumini's response came in waves of light that the translator struggled to capture. Impossible. Energy levels too high would destroy any individual attempting to channel it. Individual, yes, Chen said slowly, an idea forming. But what about collectively? Your children are already linked in a defensive matrix. What if we turned that defense into offense? Understanding rippled through the Lumini consciousness. The adult crystals began to shift, aligning themselves around the children's matrix in complex geometric patterns. Kenzo timed the bacterial release to sync with their resonance peaks, Chen ordered. Mai, reconfigure the gravity deflectors to focus the energy waves. Eva, Williams, get clear of the lower levels. This is going to get interesting. The chamber hummed with building energy as the lumini arranged themselves into a living crystalline amplifier. The children's matrix, instead of trying to block the chaotic forces around them, began to pulse in rhythm with them. "This is either going to be spectacular or catastrophic," Mai muttered, her fingers dancing over control surfaces as she directed the energy flows. "On Earth, those are usually the same thing," Williams replied, finally making it back to the central chamber with Eva. Both were covered in structural fluid but grinning. The Nexari weapon organisms were dying by the billions, their energy releasing in waves that the lumini now caught and channeled. The children's matrix blazed with light that should have been impossible, their partially formed crystals acting as prisms to focus and redirect the power. Through it all, the human team worked with the focused intensity of people who had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them. They adjusted, adapted, compensated for each new challenge the chaos threw at them. "Energy levels are approaching critical," Kenzo warned. "The lumini matrix is holding but." "Look," Eva pointed to the chamber walls. The crystalline structure, which had been fracturing moments ago, was beginning to repair itself. The energy from the dying weapon organisms, channeled through the lumini consciousness, was being converted into pure structural reinforcement. The lumini children's matrix pulsed with triumph, their light speech becoming almost musical as they realized what they were accomplishing. They weren't just surviving. They were turning the weapon meant to destroy them into the tool of their salvation. Now that, Williams said with satisfaction, is proper Earth-style problem-solving. Take what's trying to kill you and make it work for you instead. Chen watched as the colony's systems began to stabilize, as the lumini children's fear transformed into something like joy. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy, not just their physical adaptations to harsh conditions, but their endless capacity to find solutions where others saw only obstacles. The Nexari ships were already retreating, their sensors undoubtedly recording everything. They would tell others about this day, about how the Death World species had turned their perfect weapon into a tool of preservation rather than destruction. But more importantly, the lumini children would tell their own story, about how the scariest species in the galaxy had turned out to be their greatest protectors, about how being evolved for survival didn't have to mean being evolved for violence, about how Earth's harsh lessons could teach the galaxy not just how to survive, but how to thrive. Just as victory seemed within reach, every alarm in the colony screamed to life simultaneously. The Nexari hadn't retreated. They'd been preparing for one final desperate attack. Multiple impacts detected, Eva shouted over the cacophony. They're using sonic disruptors, targeting the exact resonance frequency of the lumini matrix. The chamber walls vibrated with dangerous harmonics as the Nexari weapons tried to shatter the crystalline beings at their most fundamental level. The children's matrix flickered, their carefully constructed energy channels beginning to break down. They're trying to turn the children's strength against them, Kenzo realized, his hands flying over his equipment. The more complex the crystalline structure, the more vulnerable it is to harmonic disruption. Chen watched in horror as fracture lines began spreading through the chamber. The adult lumini were desperately trying to shield the children, their own forms cracking under the assault. All their progress, all their clever solutions, were about to be undone by simple, brutal physics. That's when Williams started laughing. Everyone, human and lumini alike, turned to stare at him. He was looking at his atmospheric sensors with an expression of pure delight. "Captain," he said, still chuckling, "remember what you said about Earth bacteria adapting? Well, they're not the only ones that evolved on our little death world." Understanding dawned on Chen's face. Our inner ears. Exactly. Williams was already moving to the environmental controls. Humans evolved with the worst acoustic environment in the galaxy. Constant thunder, volcanic eruptions, earthquake harmonics. Our inner ear structures adapted to filter out frequencies that would drive most species insane. And we can use that. May caught on, her engineering mind racing ahead. If we can synchronize our environmental systems with our own biological filtering. We can create a counter-harmony, Eva finished, like noise-canceling technology, but using our own evolved abilities as the template. The chamber shuddered again as another necessary barrage hit. Cracks were spreading faster now, the children's matrix struggling to maintain cohesion. Whatever we're doing, it needs to happen now, Kenzo warned. The Lumini can't take much more of this. Chen made a decision. Eva, get to the environmental control hubs. Williams, Kenzo, we need a way to broadcast our counter-frequency through the entire colony structure. Use anything you can find, anything you can build. We have 2 minutes. The team scattered, each member pushing their Earth-evolved bodies to their limits. May and Eva navigated sections of the colony where gravity had completely failed, using their experience with spatial disorientation to stay oriented. Williams and Kenzo transformed their equipment into improvised acoustic transmitters, their hands steady even as the vibrations threatened to tear the colony apart. The Lumini watched in astonishment as the humans worked in conditions that should have incapacitated them. Even with their crystalline forms cracking, they could sense something extraordinary happening. Environmental systems recalibrated. May's voice crackled over the comm. Using Earth-standard atmospheric harmonic patterns. Transmitters ready, Kenzo reported. Syncing with human auditory frequency ranges. Now. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A new vibration rippled through the colony. But this one felt different. It wasn't the clean, artificial frequency of the Nexari weapons, but something organic, chaotic, alive. It was the sound of Earth, of thunderstorms and earthquakes, of volcanic eruptions and tidal waves, of all the forces that had shaped humanity into what they were. The Nexari harmonics tried to fight it, but they couldn't match the complexity of Earth's acoustic patterns. Their artificial frequencies shattered against the natural chaos of a Death World song. The children's matrix stabilized, then began to strengthen. The Lumini, demonstrating their own remarkable adaptability, started to incorporate the Earth harmonics into their crystalline structures. Their light speech took on new patterns, more complex and resilient than before. They're learning, Kenzo said in wonder. They're using our acoustic patterns to reinforce their own molecular bonds. The very thing that made Earth so harsh for life is helping them survive. The Nexari ships, their weapons now useless, finally began a real retreat. But Chen wasn't done yet. She opened a channel to them one last time. Remember this, she transmitted. Remember that when you tried to use physics to destroy them, we taught them to dance with chaos instead. Remember that Earth's harshness didn't make us destroyers. It made us teachers. As the enemy ships fled, Chen looked around the chamber. Her team was exhausted but triumphant. The Lumini children's matrix glowed with new strength, their light patterns incorporating harmonics that their species had never used before. They had done more than save the colony. They had helped it evolve. Williams grinned at her. Not bad for a bunch of Deathworlders. Chen smiled back, watching the Lumini children experiment with their new acoustic patterns. No, she said softly. Not bad at all. 1 month after the Proxima VI incident, the Galactic Council chamber was more crowded than it had ever been. Representatives from every spacefaring species had gathered to witness something unprecedented. The creation of a new classification for Earth. Crisis Response World. Valkyr announced, their tendrils moving in patterns of deep respect. A designation recognizing that what we once saw as limitations were, in fact, preparations. The very conditions we thought made Earth unsuitable for advanced life, instead created exactly what the galaxy needed. Chen and her team stood before the council, still bearing the marks of their ordeal. Williams had a new scar from where a falling crystal had grazed him. Eva's pressure suit had been permanently modified by her experiences. Kenzo's sample case now contained crystalline structures that defied conventional biology. May's tools would never be quite standard again. But it was the changes in the Lumini that truly showed their impact. The crystalline species had incorporated Earth harmonic patterns into their very structure, making them more resilient than ever before. The children who had been part of the Matrix now bore unique patterns in their fully formed crystals, patterns that sang with the complex frequencies of Earth's chaos. We've received 17 new emergency requests since Proxima VI, Valkyr continued, all specifically asking for human assistance. It seems the galaxy has realized that being adapted to survive extreme conditions also means being adapted to help others survive them. The Lumini ambassador approached Chen's team, their surface blazing with patterns too complex for the translator to fully capture. But the meaning was clear in the way they presented a crystalline monument, a perfect recreation of the moment when humanity's chaos had taught their children to dance with destruction. You didn't just save them, the ambassador's translation finally managed. You showed them. Showed all of us. That adaptation doesn't end with survival. That the very things that make a world harsh can become the things that make its children kind. Chen looked at her team, remembering all the moments when Earth's deadly evolution had turned out to be exactly what they needed. The gravity that made them strong enough to hold up falling structures. The atmospheric challenges that taught them to filter toxins. The constant disasters that taught them to think in ways no safe world ever could. That's the real legacy of Earth, she said, addressing not just the Council, but all the species watching across the galaxy. Not that we survived our death world, but that we learned from it. Every disaster taught us compassion. Every challenge taught us innovation. Every battle for survival taught us the importance of helping others survive. The chamber's atmospheric processors hummed as she continued. We're not death worlders anymore. We're crisis responders. Earth isn't a place that teaches fear. It's a place that teaches courage. And we're ready to share those lessons with the galaxy. As if to emphasize her point, a new alert flashed across the chamber's displays. Another emergency, another impossible situation, another chance to show what Earth's children could do. Chen looked at her team. They were already moving, already preparing, their bodies and minds shaped by a world that had never made anything easy. Williams grinned. Just another Tuesday. Just another Tuesday, Chen agreed. She turned to Valkyr. Emergency Response Team Earth, requesting permission to launch. The council chamber buzzed with excitement as the team headed for their shuttle. Throughout the galaxy, other humans were preparing for their own missions, their own chances to prove that Earth's harshness had created something remarkable. They were the children of a death world, yes, but they had become the guardians of life instead. As their shuttle lifted off, Chen thought about all the future emergencies they would face, all the impossible situations they would solve. She thought about how every challenge Earth had thrown at humanity had just been preparation for this, for the moment when the galaxy needed people who could run toward danger instead of away from it. The stars stretched out before them, each one potentially holding another crisis, another chance to show what Death World survivors could really do. And Chen smiled, because she knew something the rest of the galaxy was just beginning to understand. Sometimes, the hardest worlds create the softest hearts. Sometimes, the most dangerous planet produces the most dedicated protectors. And sometimes, a death world turns out to be exactly what life needs to thrive. Emergency Response Team Earth, she transmitted to their waiting ship, ready for deployment. Let's show the galaxy what Earth's children can really do. The legacy of Earth, it turned out, wasn't death at all. It was hope.